Welcome to day 2 of the 2019 training camp tournament stream presented by Huntington Bank. I'm Daniella Bruce, joined by Art Regner and Ken Kale. Guys, day 2, how you feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. I had a lot of sleep last night. I didn't go out and do the town, but I'm ready to go here on this Saturday afternoon.
I would question that. It's a good story. Am I buying it? I'm not sure. I think we're all excited, especially the group we're going to focus on today, which is Team Del Vecchio, which hit the ice about 5 minutes or so ago. This is a lot of high-end prospects and obviously a lot of good Red Wings featuring their number one line of Dylan Larkin, Tyler Bertuzzi, and, of course, I affectionately call him Big Tony, Anthony Mantha.
Definitely. We're going to have a lot of fun talking about Team Del Vecchio today. But first, we're going to throw to Carley Johnston. She's got a surprise for all of you tuning into the stream.
Thanks, Daniella. That's right. Not only am I excited to watch Team Del Vecchio out here, but for you guys, the fans at home watching the stream, I have 3 pairs of tickets to the preseason game on Friday night against the New York Islanders at Little Caesars Arena. All you guys have to do is comment "Pick Me" in the comment section below the stream, and our social media will reach out to you and let you guys know if you have one. But back to training camp today. I'm excited to see Team Del Vecchio out there. They are stacked. We've got the big first line, Mantha, Bert, Larkin. We also got the young guys out there. Got Kaufman, Valeno, and Zadina. And some of the new guys, there's Kasky and Ernie. So it's really exciting. Howie's out there and that. It's going to be a good day. I'm excited for the stream. How about you guys?
Yes, we are too, Carly. Thank you, guys. Good luck in winning those preseason tickets. That's just next week we start our preseason games. As Carly said, though, we've got some of the big guns out there. Dylan Larkin, Anthony Mantha, Tyler Bertuzzi, mixed in with Zadina, Valeno, Kaufman. So this is going to be a really fun day. Who are you guys really looking forward to?
Well, what a treat for our viewers, right?
Right,
to be able
yes.
to see all this high-end talent, and it's good because they mixed the ice times around here for the training camp, so you get to see a lot of the players that you'll be seeing throughout the preseason and regular season. But I'm really looking forward to that top line because they were awesome last year. Mm-hmm. When there was really nothing to play for, they really stepped up their game. And a lot of times, teams that are out of the playoffs, sometimes they just go through the motions. But Jeff Blashill wanted his team to compete hard. They went on a winning streak, and that line was terrific. So I'm excited to see him play here today. And how about Anthony Mantha, Art? Yeah. Boy, what a tournament he had after the end of the season.
Right, yeah. Anthony Mantha would have been a 30-goal scorer if he didn't have, and it wasn't really a broken hand last year. It was more like a ligament issue in his middle finger on his right hand. But I guess I'm kind of eager to see one player we didn't say, but Steve Yzerman, when he addressed the meeting yesterday, focused Giovanni Smith. Mm-hmm. Giovanni Smith has a year pro under his belt. He's going to be out on the ice. Oliver Kasky, the Finnish defenseman that they signed as a free agent, is out here. Phillip Aronnax. So, like I said, virtually everybody that's out on the ice has a compelling story right now, and I'm just interested to see how everyone meshes.
Dylan Larkin is out there right now, and he addressed the media a little bit yesterday after hearing the news of the 4 alternate captains. Like you guys said, he said everything he's supposed to. He's ready to lead the team, and he's ready to wear the A on his chest, and he seemed ready to go. What do you guys think about that situation for him?
Well, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, and Dylan Larkin, when it's time, it's time. And,
right.
And Steve Yzerman feels that, right now is not the time, and he has his reasons for that. But Dylan Larkin, obviously, this is his team, and it has been his team.
Oh, man, that was an art line. This is Dylan Larkin's team.
Well, it is, and
kind of a bit.
And that's not to say that there's anything against any other player that is a leader on this club that's going to be wearing the A again this year. But it's one of the things where if you're a captain like Steve Yzerman for so many years, you know what it takes to be a captain. He has an inside track on what it takes to be a leader. Not that Dylan isn't a leader yet, he is, but he just knows when the right time is to award that captaincy. Until then, it's a team effort, team leadership, and that's what it's all about.
I think Steve, and Ken and I know this from covering him virtually almost his entire career when he was a Red Wing, there's a certain standard that Steve wants off the ice, and he doesn't know everybody right now. Jeff Blashill said, and Steve, when he addressed the meeting yesterday, he said, I just need to be familiar with these guys. I just really want to know them a little bit before I give somebody that responsibility. I think the interesting that Jeff Blashill said is that there's going to be 4 A's. The permanent A's are Justin Abdicator, which makes sense, and Dylan Larkin. They're going to be wearing the A's all season long, or until the Red Wings decide that they're going to name a captain. And then Luke Glendening and Franz Nielsen, much like Nielsen did last year, they're going to alternate between the road and home games. But Luke Glendening is an interesting case because he was a preferred walk-on at Michigan as a freshman, and then as a sophomore, he was an alternate captain, and then he captained Michigan's team from junior as a junior and senior for 2 years. So Blashill wanted to give him a letter because he thinks he's an important voice in that team, and that maybe giving him a letter would have him become more of a voice, be more comfortable to speak out in the room. So I think they love their leadership group, and we're not talking about guys like Jonathan Eriksen, who's been here forever, Mike Green, Trevor Daly. I mean, these are all Danny Dekeyser. They don't lack leadership, that's for sure, and so we'll see how that captain thing plays out.
Let's talk a little bit more about those guys. You mentioned most of them on the blue line. Danny Dekeyser and Jonathan Eriksen are out there today, and some of the young guys that are out there, Joe Hicketts and Phillip Aronnax, are also out there. So what can you expect to see from these guys on the blue line for Team Del Vecchio?
Let's start with Danny Dekeyser, and it's unfortunate that he was injured last year because he was having a really good season. When he came back from injury, he was one of the better defensemen that the Red Wings had back there on the blue line. And it was an interesting stat that we were talking about yesterday. We're talking about Mike Green being injured and Danny Dekeyser. When they played together and they weren't injured, their numbers were incredible. But when one was injured and the other one wasn't, their numbers went down a little bit. So Danny Dekeyser took really good strides, I thought, last year, especially at the end of the season. And they're counting on him to have another good season with the Red Wings and be one of the leaders out there.
In the not-too-distant future, Danny Dekeyser is going to be the elder statesman on the blue line. And he's 29 years old. So I think Danny Dekeyser quietly, a couple of years ago, he thought that he had a bruised ankle, and it turned out that he had a small hairline fracture in the ankle, and that really set him back. And when he did come back, he was out for what seemed like forever, an eternity, but it was a number of games. He came back, and I think in the first 10 games he was like a minus 14. Since that time, once he got up to speed again, he has been a plus player for the Red Wings. He logs a lot. He led the team in ice time last year, and he does have a knack because he's a great skater. For a big man, he's a great skater, and I think Ken called a few game-winning goals in overtime. Danny has a habit of 3-on-3 of really excelling, so I think Dekeyser sometimes gets a little bit of a bad rap. He's a solid defenseman, and I think that he will just continue to get better and better and better. And once the transition is complete and Dekeyser is the elder statesman on the blue line, he's a pretty good leader as well.
And the other player, Daniella, you were talking about was Jonathan Eriksen, and he's had a tough go, and a lot of it is because he's had some minor injuries that have really plagued him throughout the last 5 years of his career. And when he came in, he was the last draft choice.
Mr. Irrelevant of the NHL draft.
And here's the thing I always tell fans is, like, name me another player who was drafted last that has played as long as Jonathan Eriksen, and it doesn't happen too much, so he's defied the odds. But again, he's an elder statesman, as Art was mentioning, and he's one of those guys that, if there are issues, people can talk to him, especially some of the young players. And I know that Oliver Kasky was skating with him and talking to him, and I asked him about Oliver about veteran leadership, and he said, yeah, Jonathan has really helped me out in the short time that he's been here in training camp.
Yeah, Eriksen's been bothered more by a couple of back issues lately, and and that kind of took him out of last season. As a matter of fact, I think last year for the first time he was a healthy scratch in a couple of games, but he was coming back from those injuries. I think that, unfortunately for Jonathan Eriksen, because when he broke in, it was during a playoff series. He was actually a forward growing up in Sweden. His dad coached that team, and they had a rash of injuries, and they moved him back to the blue line, and he stayed. And when he came here, he really came on, like the old expression, gangbusters. He did really, really well, and everybody was saying, and they labeled him, well, look at the Red Wings. Here it is. This guy is taken last in the draft, and, they found another gem, another Datsuk, another Zetterberg. So I think it wasn't a blessing in disguise, as long as it was almost a curse, because the expectation level for Jonathan Eriksen has been through the roof. And when he hadn't lived up to those expectations, just a good, steady, solid defenseman, and I'm talking more about offensive numbers, which he had when he first broke in, I think that, sometimes the expectation level for him was just too much. I mean, you've got to let players level themselves out, find what they're going to do and what their role is. And when Jonathan Eriksen broke in, he was anointed as this very superstar defenseman, and he's just, and he's not been bad for sure,
right.
but I mean, just a good solid defenseman who offensively is not the player that everyone envisioned him to be.
Well, let's move on to talking some of the younger guys. We've heard Phillip Aronnax's name a lot, so there are actually some expectations for him this season. What are you guys expecting to see?
Well, he certainly had a good tournament after the season across the water, and he's really developed and flourished. And he started the season last year, went through some struggles, pinched at times when maybe he shouldn't, was sent down to Grand Rapids, and actually played pretty well, earned a spot on this team, came back, and really was a solid defender. And what I really like about Aronnax is that he can put points on the board, and he's not one of those flashy kind of Mike Green type defensemen. He's pretty rugged, and he's got a mean streak to him. So he'll go into the corners, he'll mix it up, he'll give you the stick every now and then. But he's pretty good on the power play as well, and we saw him generate a lot of offense on the power play. And that's an area where the Red Wings this season, I think, need to improve upon. The power play and the penalty kill specialty teams, they've struggled over the last couple of years, and a lot of it is lack of offense from their defensemen. So if he can put up some points and continue to do that, then they're on their way to a better power play. And if you have a better power play, you can count on several victories over the course of the season that you may win, where in other years when you didn't have the good power play, you could have lost.
Well, we saw, I know I keep harping on the prospects tournament because I think maybe I've been celebrating that championship a little too hard since I've been up here. But we saw the Red Wings power play unit was 9 of 19, which won that tournament for them. And obviously what Aronnax has done is was able to, at the World Championships for the Czech Republic team, he quarterbacked their power play and was great. And Ken's so right on. If Aronnax can keep going up and putting up offensive numbers and be a solid defenseman, which he pretty much already is, but if he can quarterback the power play for the Red Wings, that will really, really help this team out. Jeff Blashill, and we talked a little bit about the number one line, Jeff Blashill again reiterated, if I can have a number one line that I can count on that can put up points and also take the other top team out, nullify and neutralize them, which is big. Well, if that first line can do that, and then you have a couple of guys who can really are really talented and can quarterback the power play, and Aronnax is one of the guys that they're really looking at for that. So that will make the Red Wings significantly better and more consistent. Because I think, as Ken has pointed out many times, I mean, the difference between winning and losing is consistency, and if you can be consistent, because when you're not consistent, and Jeff Blashill said this yesterday, I couldn't agree more, if you're not consistent, then teams usually end up beating themselves more than the opposition beats them, and that's because they just can't get consistent, they can't put it together.
Let's move on talking about forwards again. One guy that we mentioned in the top line, Tyler Bertuzzi. We haven't talked too much about him yet, but what a year out of him last year. Kind of unexpected, but he really, really found his place on this Red Wings team.
Daniella, a couple years ago, Jeff Blashill at the end of the season told Tyler Bertuzzi, we want you to go back home and we want you to get stronger and we want you to work with the weights, and that's really going to elevate your game. And certainly he came back last year and it was his best season that he had with the Red Wings. And he started finishing, too. And that's the thing. Early in his career, he'd have opportunities in front of the net, and he's that good net front presence guy where he can get in there and get opportunities, but he was missing the net with his shots.
Right.
But things started going his way last year, and he's one of those guys that you need. It's kind of like a Thomas Holmstrom or a Dino Ciccarelli. You need guys that are going to take the lumber in front of the net, battle hard for positioning, and when you get the opportunity to put the puck in the net, and certainly Tyler Bertuzzi has done that.
And what do they call it? That he scores the dirty goals. He's always there to finish the rebounds. He's in front of the net all the time, and he scored 21 goals last season, so he had by far his best.
And you look at dirty goals, how about assistant general manager Pat Verbeek? He made a living right out in front of the net. He scored over 500 goals, and I don't think any of his goals came from beyond the hash marks. And that's the type of player that Tyler Bertuzzi is. He'll muck it up. If
he's half the player the little ball of hate was, then they've got a real find. Look, Tyler Bertuzzi is a hockey player. I mean, that's what he is. He goes to the dirty areas. He goes to the greasy areas. He just gets it done. But he was the first Red Wing in their history. Now, I think he went 4 consecutive games getting 3 points or more, which has never been done in Red Wing history. So he does have a great upside, and I think he benefits. He makes you can always say, well, he plays with good players. Obviously, Mantha and Dylan Larkin are world-class players, so that helps him out. Don't kid yourself. He helps Larkin and Mantha out as well because of the game and the element and the grit and toughness he brings.
Art, we just saw on the ice, Giovanni Smith scored a goal there. We were talking about him earlier. He played a really great prospects tournament as well.
Giovanni Smith is, he's one of my favorites. He's one of our bloggers. I got to know him really well over last season, helping him, write his blog and talking to him about it. Here was a guy that had a really tough transition on and off the ice to the pro game, the AHL game. He really came on in the second half of the season, had a good playoff run for Grand Rapids. Unfortunately, it was only 5 games long. Steve Yzerman talked about him yesterday and thought that he played well in the prospects tournament. They like his size. He would be the prototypical power forward. He's not afraid to bang up, to do some banging on the ice, and he also plays very, very well with the puck and has skill, and proved that in the prospects tournament by scoring a couple of big goals in the championship game.
Speaking of scoring, Anthony Mantha, your buddy, just picked up a goal here for the Red Wings on a nice shot, and that's the shot that is his bread and butter. When he's in the slot, he can pick corners. He had a nice goal right there.
Right. I mean, Mantha is he's the most honest player that you're ever going to meet. I mean, when he doesn't play well, he's the first to admit it, very accountable player. And I think what we're seeing here, and I think it's very, very important, is the maturation process. And Anthony Mantha, tough luck. When he turned pro, he broke his leg. And he was out for a significant period of time as a rookie, and it's taken him a while to get back. He's so important, and he thinks about it so much that he actually, until this day, sees a sports psychologist to talk things over and make sure that he's right. So again, when somebody does something like that, I really tip my cap to them because he will do whatever it takes in order to be great.
The other thing, Art, too, is we talk about the guys that are carrying the load for the Red Wings and Daniella too, like Mantha and Larkin. But these guys still need to take it a step ahead. And you know what? People are looking at them saying, yeah, they moved a step ahead, but you got to continue to improve and get better. And one of the things that I think the Red Wings need to do is they need to score goals. Mm-hmm. And that's been really a problem over the last several years is that, they've been one of the lower scoring teams in the National Hockey League. And you look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Steve Yzerman knows this. They scored over 300 goals last year. And that wins you a lot of games. And we saw it in the prospects tournament. When the team is down, but you're able to score, you can come back and win those games. And, the Red Wings had a pretty tough couple of seasons as far as, putting the puck in the net. They've lost a ton of one-goal games. But when you start scoring, now the tide turns, and more often than not, you win those one-goal and close games.
We've talked about our veteran guys, the guys that are going to be our first line. We've got AA as well. But let's talk about some of the young guys. You mentioned goal scorers, a guy that netted 7 goals in the prospects tournament, Joe Veleno. He's out there on Team Del Vecchio. What do you think it's like for him to play alongside this first line?
Well, I think that Joe Veleno has elevated himself and is really in the eye of the Red Wings. What they like about him is that he's very, very coachable. And another thing which we mentioned during the prospects tournament, when the Red Wings prospects team needed a player to step up, which they needed in virtually all 4 games in the third period, it was Joe Veleno who stood up. He showed he had a great touch on his shot, which was a knock against him when the Red Wings drafted him. He was a great player, except his shot wasn't hard and accurate. Well, I don't think that's the case anymore, but he turned himself. He took to heart everything the Red Wings told him last year to do in Drummondville, and he became a 200-foot player, and I think that that's the most impressive thing. He's much bigger. He's larger. He's a very, very disciplined hockey player, and Steve Yzerman stressed this yesterday about him, is that he wants to be here. I mean, he really, really wants it. And then again, that goes back to what we talked about, that compete level. And Veleno has a very high compete level because Yzerman said something yesterday. Look, if you don't have a compete level, you're never going to play in the NHL. And Joe Veleno has it.
Another guy that impressed us during the prospects tournament was Ryan Kuffner. He's out there taking some shots right now. we've always talked about how his time with the Red Wings wasn't as great as Taro Hirose because they kind of came in at the same time. So it was like, wow, Taro Hirose's playing really well. But Ryan Kuffner in development camp came in, scored a couple goals. All of a sudden he had this confidence, and he played really, really well in the Prospects tournament.
He was the team's leading scorer.
Yep.
And his bread and butter is his shot. And we talked about goal scoring just a moment ago. If he can do that in the National Hockey League and put the puck in the net, that's only going to help the Red Wings, I think. And certain players have certain roles. You have your grinders, you have your checkers out there, and you got guys that score. To me, Ryan Kuffner is not a guy that's going to go out there and play big as far as hitting people in along the boards and, making big, solid body checks. He's a sniper, and he's got a great shot, and so if he can do that for Detroit, find his niche, maybe start the season if he's going to start in Grand Rapids and start putting some numbers up on the board there, then you call him up, and if he can do that in the National Hockey League, all of a sudden you've got a diamond in the rough.
He's a real heady player. If he can figure it out, and maybe it'll take him, a season or so in the AHL to find his spot, make sure he can get his time, he can get his space to get that shot off, because he does have. We talk about Zadina's shot, and Zadina's shot is incredible, number one. But number two, Kuffner has a really good shot as well. What we're seeing on the ice right now is pretty interesting. It's Dylan Larkin and Phillip Aronnax is shooting pucks at him, and they're doing a tip drill here. And I think virtually every time as I've been watching it, Larkin has tipped every puck into the net. And just as we said that, Dylan said, "Hey, I can hear you, Art. I'm leaving."
Thomas Holmstrom used to do that.
Yeah, right, exactly. I watching the tip drill has always been one of my favorite, because I just think it's extraordinary that these guys stand in front of the net, have these other, very accomplished players shooting right at them, and they're able to somehow not to get hit, and just be able to just slightly just alter the course of the puck into the net. I mean, it's pretty cool to watch.
Maybe that's a duo we see in the future, Hronek taking shots and Dylan Larkin tipping them in.
What was the old joke that Nicholas Lidstrom had? He said, "I could have had more goals if it wasn't for Holmstrom tipping them in front of the net."
Right.
He says, "My goal numbers would have been better if it wasn't for Homer out in front of the net."
I thought Nick did pretty well, but you're right. He probably, which is true. I mean, and let's be honest, Thomas Holmstrom's goal total should be significantly higher too. I think till this day, and I don't think it's ever going to be broken. Talk about a guy who had more goals like whistled back or called back for being in the crease, or his fanny being in the crease, or whatever.
That one.
Yeah,
Dallas in the playoffs.
Yeah, right. I mean, just some weird stuff happened to old Homer in there, but he certainly was one of the best. Another former Red Wing, Dino Ciccarelli. Also, you talked about Pat Verbeek, the little ball of hate. He, they were both cut kind of from the same cloth. Not the biggest guys, but they were willing, much like Tyler Bertuzzi, as we said earlier, they're willing to go to those spaces and create and do whatever it takes for their team to do well, to win, and to score goals.
And the other thing, too, real quickly here, is that the game has changed a lot since Thomas Holmstrom played, and you don't really see Homer, like Homer used to get in front of the net for the entire shift.
Right,
when he was in the offensive zone and just
right.
bother the goaltender, get in his face. The game's changed a little bit now, and the way the players skate and the way the puck is being moved, you really can't afford a guy to stand in front of the net like that, like Homer did. Obviously, if you're on a power play, that's a little bit of a different story.
Exactly right.
But during the course of 5-on-5 play, that's pretty hard. But, Homer was a guy that everybody hated, but if he was on your team, you loved him.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be that guy, though. Those are the guys you want on your team.
And he played in the right era, because I can remember after he had retired, he came up to a couple of development camps when they were still here in Traverse City. And he specifically was here as a coach to teach them how the prospects to stand in front of the net and tip the puck in. And I see him, and I go, "Well, what do you think?" He goes, "They are sissies. They are sissies. They won't stand in the net." But the game, as Ken just aptly pointed out, it was evolving. So it's a lost art, but it's still needed, but it's more situational than it was when Homer played, where, as Ken said, he was right in front of the net the whole time. But I'll never forget that, because, Homer had a really great way with phraseology with English.
Swinglish.
Yeah, Swinglish. Yeah, because Swedish and English. And then, the Red Wings used to, he was so far north, he came from so far north in Sweden, he thought he was a Laplander, and, with actual reindeer and stuff. But he would always say, "Oh, I don't know today." He goes, "I'm in Scotty's dog yard." He would always say Scotty's
Dog yard.
instead of doghouse. We go,
that's funny.
yeah. So Homer, really one of our favorites certainly, but extraordinary player. But tipping in front of the net, you still need it. You saw Larkin just working on it, and who else is great at that? And I think one of the reasons why. He was on the Red Wings last year was Michael Rasmussen. For a man his size, when he stands in front of the net, obviously he screens the goalie really well, but his hand-eye coordination is pretty extraordinary as well.
Yes, we didn't get to talk too much about Rasmussen, actually, but before we do that, we didn't get to talk about Jimmy Howard before he left the ice either. He was on Team Del Vecchio. He signed a one-year contract extension just back in March. What do you guys think about Jimmy Howard? I know that sometimes he was put in some bad situations last season, that his numbers weren't as great as they could have been, but what do you think about him as a goaltender?
They still had some, pretty good games
Yes,
for
he
the
did,
Red Wings.
definitely.
And he always seems to play well against the New York Rangers, But, it's been tough. And here's the thing. The goalie is the guy that's the last defender on the ice. And when that puck goes in, he feels the worst out of anybody on the team. But goalkeeping, let's keep in mind, it's surrounded by the team you have in front of you. And if you have help from your forwards coming back deep into the zone and your defenseman can get that first pass out of the zone, all of a sudden you've eliminated a lot of problems in your own end. The problems the Red Wings had is at times they couldn't get their puck out of the own zone. And when you miss a guy like Zetterberg and Datsuk, who were world-class two-way players who were very good defensively in your own zone, now you're going to have some holes there. So I think perhaps the Red Wings are working on the fact that we got some youngsters coming in, but if they can play better in their own end, get some help from defensive guys like Phillip, who's a defensive forward that can come back and help out, all of a sudden you've eliminated some problems. And if the Red Wings can get better in their own zone and, the defenseman can get to the puck and make that first pass out, it gets them out of a lot of trouble.
Well, Jeff Blashill said yesterday, the first thing is we've got to be better defensively. We have to be an elite-level defensive club, and we're nowhere near that. So that is something that's going to be stressed in this camp. I think arguably you can make a strong case that Jimmy Howard actually has been the Red Wings MVP the last two seasons. And I think last year his numbers just didn't reflect how good he actually has been. And what's great about it is because Jimmy, has had some issues with injuries over the years, and if he stays relatively healthy, who knows what they'll do come trade deadline? Do they move him and then I think re-sign him next July 1st because he'll be an unrestricted free agent? But Jimmy Howard is a team player. And, I know I sound cliche-ridden today, but it's really true about Jimmy. When you go in and talk to him, first of all, he's very accountable. Win or lose, he will talk. He will speak. When he lets in, he gets a shutout or he lets in 10 goals, on 3 shots, which is impossible. But, I mean, if he does that, he stand up. And what he always says, if there is a line that he continually repeats, I just want to make saves for the guys. I just want to make saves for the guys. I want to give the guys a chance to win. He always is talking about the guys. And it tells you really what he's thinking, where his mindset is at. I think that if the Red Wings weren't going through a transitional period now in a rebuild, I think he would be considered among the elite level goalies. Unfortunately, because his numbers reflect really, and it's more of a team defense that the Red Wings are playing in front of him, which has not been good. But I think Howard has been solid in net, and hopefully he can stay healthy, and he'll continue being right up there as far as MVP of the team talk goes.
The other thing about Jimmy Howard, too, is he really didn't get a lot of offensive help. And time after time, I can't tell you how many times in the first period last year, he might have let in 1 goal and then made 10, 12 really good saves. And when your team's not scoring to help you out, it's like a pitcher in baseball. When you're throwing, you're getting outs and you're not getting any run support. Well, it would help if the Red Wings had some goal support after the way he's been playing. The problem is they didn't have that. And if your goalie's going to stand on his head, 1 or 2 get by and you lose 2-1, it's a bad rap. People look at the goalie and say, goalie didn't play well. Well, that's not the case. You need some help from your forwards and defensemen scoring sometimes.
He kept them in so many games last year. I remember watching, and like you said, losing 2-1, losing by 1 goal, 3-4, going to overtime, whatever it may be. A lot of that was because of Jimmy Howard or Jonathan Bernier, whoever was in net that night helping out.
Well, Bernier was really a hard luck goalie. I can remember last year a game in Philadelphia where Jimmy did have a real good game, and I think it was like 5-1 or something Philly. And then so Jimmy gets pulled. You take a rest, Jimmy. Which I'm sure he relished. So he's sitting on the bench. Red Wings come back, tie the game up 5-5, and end up losing in overtime. Bernier, who played great, gives up 1 goal in overtime and ends up being the losing goaltender.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember going up to the next day. I said, Jonathan, I really feel for you. And he just laughed. He said, hey, that's hockey. I mean, he had a good mind about it. But Bernier's numbers, we talked about Jimmy's. I think Bernier was a much better goaltender than his numbers indicated, too. He was in a couple of really bad games early on, that Montreal-Boston trip that the Red Wings took last year. They lost 8-3, and then I think it was like 10 goals or something to Montreal. It was just really bad. So he was... he always got the back-to-back on the road, the second game, and so. But he's a pretty good goaltender too.
Well, let's take a couple minutes to check in with Carley Johnston down on ice level. She was here for practice. So, Carley, what do you have for us?
I just wanted to say I heard you guys talking about Jimmy Howard, and that is one thing I feel like I'm focusing on this upcoming season, because there are a couple times, and the players even said in the post-game comments in the locker room, that they left Howie high and dry out there to just take the pucks. I mean, it gets tough when, like Ken and Art said, it's hard when your forwards aren't producing goals, but your blue line is plagued with injuries. So Howie was kind of left to snatch those pucks for himself. I mean, he needs help on the other end of the ice. So that, and also Jonathan Bernier is a solid backup goalie. I mean, he's had a few really good runs for himself, whether he's starting or he's coming in the second half of the game, whatever it may be. He's always had some solid goaltending in that. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to seeing. Not just that, but we saw Sean Romeo. I mean, personally, he was my MVP for the Prospects tournament. He did an awesome job. So are we going to bring him to the Griffins? What are we going to do with Sean Romeo? Is he going to be a backup? Who knows? So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen in net for the Red Wings this season. And I'm also looking forward to seeing some of the new faces on the ice wearing that winged wheel on their chest. Obviously, Phil will be back wearing that winged wheel on his chest. He's no stranger to the Red Wings organization, so I know a lot of fans are stoked to see what he can produce for the Red Wings this season, as well as Kasky and Ernie, just to see what they can do and what they can bring to this team, not only on the ice but off the ice too. I know the guys are pretty close in the locker room, just to see how they'll fit in as well. I know it's a young group, so maybe Phil can give them some pointers, but it'll be awesome to see what the team has to offer. And first preseason game at home is on Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to the season. Just wanted to give a few thoughts on that. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thank you, Carley. And I think all the fans are excited for preseason to get started. And she was talking about Phil down there. Valtteri Filppula, she's talking about, back on the Red Wings after being away for a while. Do you think that's exciting for fans and maybe even the players, too, just to have a veteran presence who knows this organization pretty well?
I think it's always great when a player can come back and go to the team that he started his career with. And Valtteri Filppula went to Tampa Bay, was pretty valuable there, and was around the New York Islanders last year.
Yeah, and then Philadelphia before that.
Philadelphia. And again, he's a two-way player. He's a very good defensive forward, pretty good on face-offs. And one thing about these Finnish guys is they always play hard. They rarely take days off, and that's what we can expect from Valtteri Filppula. Now, with that said, he is up there in age. He still looks like he's a youngster out there, but playing 82 games, sometimes it takes a toll. But again, I think as a veteran, it's going to help some of the younger guys, and that's what the team needs right now. Is these younger guys. They're going to be in a situation where they're in a close game. And, in the National Hockey League, and they've never experienced this before. That's when your veterans got to come in there and set the tone and calm some of the youngsters down or tell them to be in control of themselves, because the worst thing you can do when you're a young player coming into this league in a difficult situation is play out of your element. And if you're a puck mover and you start trying to be a little more fancy, it's going to end up in the back of your net. So that's what the veterans are really good for, is calming players down and tell them to play within their own game.
And the Red Wings really need a legitimate second-line center. Franz Nielsen has been in and out of that position since he has been here in Detroit, and I think Val Filppula obviously brings that. He looks identical to the day he left. I mean, he hasn't aged at all.
Got to figure out his secret.
Well, I asked him. I said, "Are you going to be doing a reality show about working out or something after you retire?" And he said, "I guarantee you that's never going to happen." But the thing that he does bring is that veteran presence. Obviously, Steve signed him as an unrestricted unrestricted free agent in Tampa and then signed him back here in Detroit. So he's familiar with him. He likes his game because it's a two-way game. I think he'll be a good influence on all the youngsters. And he said, because we said, well, now you're a veteran. And he goes, I'm glad that you called me a veteran and didn't say I was old. So, it's a good signing. It's for 2 years, and I think that's what you're going to see. I think depending, everyone looks and everyone's used to it. One time the Red Wings were always in, getting free agents on July 1st, signing guys to multi-year deals. And, obviously at one time, Ken and I can remember we used to just sit there on trade deadline day, and it was like Christmas Day. The Red Wings would bring in a who's who of hockey a lot of times. Under Steve right now, I think those days, as much as they can still be, you can still have those days because it's, the system's changed with the hard cap league. But I think until they're ready, you'll know that when the Red Wings, or specifically Steve Yzerman, thinks the Red Wings are ready to really contend and make a move, then you're going to see multi-year deals. You're going to see him be, his aggressive self. He'll bring people in. I think until that time, you're going to see a lot of guys like a Namath and Filppula and Pickard. He's going to sign guys to probably 1-2 year. If he could get 1 year deals, probably more likely 2 year deals until this team is really ready to take that next step.
Coach Blashill spoke with us during Prospects Tournament, and he also addressed the media after yesterday's practice. So let's see what he had to say after training camp day one.
Jeff, who is going to rotate with the A's?
How will the A's rotate?
Yeah.
Abby will have an A permanently, Larkin will have an A permanently, and Nielsen and Glennie will rotate depending home and away games.
What went into that decision, John? Or what were you guys thinking about?
Into the decision for what?
4 A's rather than the 1C.
Rather than the C. Well, Steve and I talked through the course of the summer. I felt like I wanted to add Glennie as part of that captain group. I don't want to say leadership group because there's other leaders on the team, but he's somebody who I already have leaned on a bit. He's somebody that leads by example unbelievably. I think he's got a bigger voice, and I think this will help his voice come out. Obviously losing Croner, that opened up a potential spot there. Didn't have to do it, but I felt like we wanted Glennie to be part of it. I also think through the conversations that Steve and I had through the summer, Steve's getting to know these guys. And I don't want to speak for him. He spoke, I know already, but, I think he wanted to make sure he was super comfortable with it. Well, it's hard to be super comfortable when you're just getting to know people. So this gives us time for him to get to know people, and I think we got a real good group. At the end of the day, whether it's a letter or not a letter, whether it's a C or an A or a guy doesn't wear a letter, really none of that totally matters. I mean, I get it. It's on the jersey and all that, but there's lots of different ways to lead. We got guys on our team. Mike Green's a hell of a leader. Trevor Daly's a hell of a leader. So there's other guys on our team that are real good leaders that aren't wearing letters, and then the guys that are wearing letters, we expect them to take kind of bigger role at times.
You've seen quite a bit of some of the top forward prospects. Svechnikov over the time, Sedina. How excited are you with the preseason to see, especially Seider and Kasky and some of the defense prospects?
Well, I think it's huge. I think what I've noticed over the last 3 years is we've drafted a lot of D, and it's felt to me when I've gone to development camps like we've had a real big pool of defensemen that have a chance to be NHL players. The question that you have is how good they're going to be and how quick. I hope they're great, and it's tomorrow. And so I hope they come out and it only was added to obviously with the selection of Seider. So I hope as we get into training camp here and get into the exhibition season, it'd be great to see those guys. Kasky's somebody who I watched on tape before. Yuri Fisher had me watch him on tape ultimately before we got him, and he's got some real weapons, and then I got to see him play at the World Championships at all, and he can really shoot it. He's got a real good offensive mind. The question when a guy comes over from Europe is how do they defend on the smaller sheet, and we'll find out. And the same thing with Sides. I've got to see him in kind of totally different settings. At the men's Worlds, he was super safe. At the Prospects Tournament, he was super aggressive offensively. I think it's a real positive that he's got that offensive touch. But let's get him into games. I think he's going to end up playing the game 2 against Chicago, and that should be a test to Taves and Kane and those guys.
Give me a sense of what you think the competition level is on this team with so many young guys kind of pushing the younger veterans?
Yeah, well, I hope it's great, and for that, I mean, I hope the young guys play great. That's an awesome thing for everybody involved. But I also tell you, I think there's veterans on this team that aren't giving up their jobs easily, and they're pushing hard. I talked to a number of them, and they think they had great summers. They got better at things. They didn't just train and get ready. They got better at stuff. And so I think competition means that you have depth. So I hope we have great competition. I think the young players, we said it, when you look at the two teams, when I put two teams together, now that's two, not one, all of a sudden you run out of spots. And, guys are maybe on the fourth line and they think, they want to be top two line guys. It just shows you how hard it is. You have to take people's jobs, and they're not giving them up easy. I hope we have a strong push. I hope all our young players play great, and if they take jobs, awesome. And if the older guys demand that they keep their jobs, awesome too. But the worst part would be if the older guys didn't play good and the young guys didn't play good. So.
Because of the competition, was there a different message that you had for the team coming into camp?
I don't. I think every year is its own kind of animal, and I think every year you have an opportunity to focus on certain things, both from a team aspect and how we're going to play. For sure, we're going to have to defend great. We're going to have to make sure we're elite in that area, and we haven't been good enough in that area. And why? Well, part of it is the maturation process of young players. I think when you're a young forward, especially, or even a young D, you want to push it, and you end up beating yourselves all the time. Most teams beat themselves more than the other team wins. And so we got to make sure we do a good job not beating ourselves. That's one area. We got to make sure we're real good in that in the defensive area. The other message, just I think guys know it. I mean, it's open. There's competition for jobs.
Valeno looks like a player that really exudes confidence, and he seems to step up at big moments during the prospects tournament. As far as Zadina goes, where do you think his confidence level is at after last season, and what's he need to do to take the next step?
Well, he's got the tricky thing of he's got to do two things. Like one, he's got like any player coming in the league, you have no chance of playing if you're not a 200-foot all-around player. It's almost impossible. There's almost no players in the league that play and are effective if they're not good on both sides of the puck. So he's got to be a responsible player. But two, he's got to be dangerous, and that's a hard balance sometimes. It's easy to just be a defender. When you're expected to be solid on the defensive side of the puck, but also be dangerous offensively, it's a hard thing. Sometimes it takes a little time. I thought Z had tons of shots in the prospects tournament. I thought sometimes in a short tournament, production doesn't always equal reality. I thought he was dangerous enough times, and he's just got to carry that forward. He can't get frustrated when he doesn't score. He's just got to keep playing. I thought he made tons of plays in the first period. I thought he was the best player on the ice in the first period of the final game, and good for him. So I think part of this process of becoming an NHL player and getting to the top of the pyramid is mental toughness, and you have to find a way to keep your own confidence, maybe even when things aren't going great.
Hey Jeff, what do you need to see from Justin Navigator here in the next few weeks and going forward? I mean, you kind of admitted he had a disappointing season last year. How does he rebound from that?
Well, one thing he did really well last year, I thought he killed penalties well, and that doesn't show up in tons of stats, that's a really hard thing for, especially because our kill wasn't great. But if you look at it, he didn't get scored on very much, That's not a sexy stat or something that as a group of people that you look at a ton. But I thought he did a good job on that. I think he's been in different roles during his career here, and certainly a role when you're playing with the Paverzy like he did at one point was to go to the net, give them the puck, kind of go to the net. Depending on the line he is, it's a different role, and therefore should be different expectations. If he plays on a line that plays lots of minutes, then there's going to be a bigger expectation of production. If he plays on a line that doesn't play lots of minutes, how can you expect somebody to produce a ton? I just think he's got to focus on making sure that he hounds the puck hard. He can do a real good job of that, making sure he gets the net hard. He can do a real good job of that. So he can help feed our identity by hounding it and being suffocating in that O-zone, getting to the net, being hard around the net, and then being all around solid 200-foot player. And I think then he can help our identity.
When you look at how the Larkin and the Bertuzzi line finished last year, year, now coming back. What does it do for you as a coach and for the rest of the whole team to kind of have a established top line there to set the bar, I guess?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I think both as a coach. I mean, I think the one thing as guys are coming up, you're trying to find the right fit, and when you can find a line that has chemistry, that's a huge thing, and it's a really good line in terms of how they complement each other. Lark's motor always goes. I think Bert provides that. He's got a pretty unique ability or skill package in that he's super hard, but very, very smart, and that's a real hard thing. He's got skill. He can play with great players, goes to the net, can score tips, can do that type of stuff. Real good defensively and well. And then Mo, obviously, you know what, when Mo's moving his feet, man, he's one of the best players in the league, really. Like, he's a big monster. So, it's been a good chemistry line. And it's good, I think we feel good about it starting the year. And then we just got to find the other lines.
Svechnikov, how much you got to look at today, but obviously he missed a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to ask of Evgeny. Like, he missed, I mean, that's a huge, huge year where you're not even on the ice. You're not, so it's going to be a process with Svech, and he knows that. I think the one thing about Svech is he's a great kid. He wants to be a great player. Sometimes he's trying so hard that he hurts himself. He's just got to calm himself down. Let's look at it as a marathon, not a sprint. I think that's the biggest thing he's got to understand.
First day of camp, there were a couple of instances of doing some lateral laps, but mostly it seemed like the pace was very good. What were your impressions thereof?
Lateral laps, like where they go back and forth in the boards?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I thought our guys came to work. I mean, they came to work. I didn't think we were executing great on those couple instances. So my job is to make sure that they know that and they need to correct it. And I thought they did a good job of correcting it. But I'd tell you, I thought they came to work. It was super hard. Nobody, you don't hear any mumbling or complaining or anything like that. Our guys want to work. They want to be a way better hockey team than we've been. We've got a long ways to go to prove that, but certainly just from day one, it was a hard working day, and they answered the bell.
Everyone has us not making playoffs again, and just the path we've been on the last few years. We want to change that.
I'm a driven person. I want to be great. I want this team to be great, and I want to have a great season. So, extra motivation. No, I'm motivated to take this team where we need to be.
I hope the young guys played great. That's an awesome thing for everybody involved. But I also tell you, I think there's veterans on this team that aren't giving up their jobs easily, and they're pushing.
We're building, and we've got a mix of veteran and young players. What I'm trying to do is put the most skilled, the most competitive, the most driven, the most intelligent hockey players on the ice. We're trying to amass as many of those players as we can.
There you heard from Coach Blashill after yesterday's practice. We are going to throw to a quick break, and when we return, we'll hear from some of the guys after today's skate. Well, we were clear. Well, that ended up being a really quick break, guys. Let's cut in live with Taro Hiroshi addressing the media.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone here is competing for a job, and everyone's serious about it. But at the same time, we're looking out for each other, and that experience at the end of the season. I'm just not looking too much into it because it was the end of the season, but just trying to show my game and show them what I can do.
What did Prospects tournament do for you?
Just gave me confidence, and I got to know a lot of the other prospects a lot better. Just feeling comfortable with them on the ice and being able to talk with them. I think it's a huge positive for me being in the room and not feeling too tense or too nervous.
Who did you play with?
I played with a couple different guys, but Delano, Zadina, Lucas Savages. There's a bunch of different guys that sort of rolled through. But
with Zadina, I mean, do you see there if he can get open, there's a real skill set there for getting the puck in the net?
Yeah, he's definitely an elite talent, I think. But more than just shooting the puck, he showed in the prospects tournament that he can make plays with the puck and can find guys and get assists too. So I think he's not just a one-dimensional player. He can do a lot more than I think people give him credit for.
Have you gotten your hands, or at least seen your very first NHL rookie card?
I know my dad. He sent me a text the other day that he bought one, so I'll probably get to see it whenever he shows up here.
What do you make of that, man?
Just crazy, you never really expect that to happen when you're a kid collecting cards when you're growing up, and just sort of a surreal feeling.
What are the things you worked on most since the development camp?
Just skating and making sure my first couple strides are a lot better because everyone's a lot faster in this league, and doing a lot of shooting with Brandon Arado, one of the skills coaches. So
we apologize for the audio issues on that one. We were having some technical difficulties with the mic. We will try to get that fixed for you later tonight. Guys, we've got the alumni game tonight. The stream's going to start at 5:30. I unfortunately won't be here, but these two and Carley are going to have all of the coverage for you. You won't want to miss out on that.
I'm excited. I'm trying to. If we didn't need Mr. Cal up here, I would love him to play because he was a very accomplished hockey player at one time in his life.
No, I played in that game about 4 years ago. I had 3 shifts, -7. They said, that's it. You're not playing anymore. And then one guy put an orange cone on the ice and put my name and taped Cal on it because I guess they thought I was a pylon.
Well, you look good in orange, though.
But no, we're looking forward to the game tonight, and we hope you can tune in. And you're going to see guys like Johnny Ogrodnik. He's going to be here. Kirk Maltby, Chris Draper. They're all going to suit up. And they're playing the Guns and Hoses team, and that is the police and firemen of Traverse City around the area here. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's a sellout crowd here, and it's going to be enjoyable to bring you all the action. And I hope we get some laughs from some.
I was going to say, Guns and Hoses, we better watch our tongue a little bit. We could slip of the tongue. We could get some FCC regulations here or something. But it'll be great. I'm really looking forward to it. And then, of course, tomorrow we have the big red and white game. So then that.
And we're on at, 11:30
Yep,
on Sunday?
11:30 on Sunday. So that's 5:30 tonight for the puck drop of the alumni game at 6 o'clock. And tomorrow, live at 11:30 for the puck drop at 12 p.m. of the red and white game. I'm Daniella Bruce alongside Art Regner and Ken Kale and Carley Johnston. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
See ya.